Definition and scope of administrative law, LLBPU. Administrative law governs the activities of administrative agencies, ensuring they operate within the law. It regulates the powers, duties, and functioning of these agencies, focusing on rulemaking, adjudication, and enforcement. Its scope includes judicial review, delegated legislation, principles of natural justice, and remedies for administrative excesses, ensuring accountability, transparency, and fairness in public administration. History and growth of administrative law, India, UK, USA. India. Rooted in ancient governance with principles of justice under rulers like Ashoka. Modern administrative law evolved during British rule with laws like the Government of India Acts. Post-independence, its growth expanded with judicial reviews and constitutional provisions, focusing on fairness and accountability in administration. United Kingdom developed from common law principles emphasizing individual rights against state excesses. Growth was gradual, with the rise of delegated legislation during industrialization and welfare state policies. Landmark developments include judicial review and tribunals like the Council on Tribunals, 1958. United States of America. Rapid growth during the 20th century with the emergence of administrative agencies under the New Deal. The Administrative Procedure Act, 1946, formalized principles of rulemaking, adjudication, and judicial review, balancing agency powers with citizen rights. Difference between constitutional law and administrative law. Constitutional law deals with the fundamental principles of governance, distribution of powers, and the rights of citizens as defined in the Constitution. It outlines the framework for political institutions and the relationship between state and individual. Administrative law focuses on the functioning of administrative agencies, regulating their powers, duties, and actions. It ensures public administration remains within the limits of the law and protects individual rights through judicial review. Concept of rule of law. The rule of law is the principle that all individuals, institutions, and entities are subject to and accountable under the law. It ensures fairness, equality, and justice in governance and prevents arbitrary rule by establishing that the law is supreme. Rule of law and the Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution enshrines the rule of law by guaranteeing fundamental rights and establishing an independent judiciary. It ensures that the government operates within the law, respects individual rights, and follows due process, maintaining legal accountability and justice in the country. Articles like 14, Equality before law, and 32, Right to constitutional remedies, reflect the essence of the rule of law in India. Doctrine of separation of powers. The doctrine of separation of powers divides government powers into three branches: the legislature makes laws, executive implements laws, and judiciary interprets laws. This division ensures that no single entity holds excessive power, thereby preventing abuse and safeguarding democracy. In India, the Constitution provides for this separation, though there is some overlap between branches in practice. Right to open government. The right to open government refers to the principle that government actions should be transparent, allowing citizens to access information about the workings of the state. This promotes accountability and reduces corruption by ensuring that public decisions and policies are subject to scrutiny. Right to information in India. The Right to Information (RTI) Act 2005 empowers Indian citizens to request information from public authorities. It mandates timely responses to such requests, fostering transparency and accountability in government. This right is a tool for enhancing public participation in governance, ensuring that citizens can monitor and evaluate government actions effectively. Delegated legislation, necessity, merits and demerits, and constitutionality. Necessity of delegated legislation. Delegated legislation is necessary due to the complexity and volume of laws that cannot all be detailed by the legislature itself. It allows the executive to make rules and regulations within the framework of an enabling statute. This is essential for the efficient administration of laws in rapidly changing conditions and for dealing with technical or specialized matters that the legislature may not have the expertise to address. Merits of delegated legislation. Efficiency. It allows for swift implementation of laws without waiting for the legislature to pass detailed laws for every situation. Flexibility provides the ability to amend or modify laws based on changing circumstances without the need for a new act. Expertise. Agencies can enact detailed regulations based on expertise in specific fields, which is often beyond the reach of the legislature. Time saving reduces the burden on the legislature by delegating technical or routine matters. Demerits of delegated legislation. Risk of arbitrary power. It can lead to the concentration of power in the hands of the executive without sufficient oversight from the legislature. Lack of accountability. The executive may use delegated powers in ways that lack transparency and are not always subject to judicial review. Undemocratic. It may bypass democratic scrutiny as these regulations are not subject to the same rigorous parliamentary processes as primary legislation. Inconsistency. If not properly controlled, delegated legislation can create confusion or contradictions with primary laws. Constitutionality of delegated legislation. In India, the Constitution permits delegated legislation, particularly under Article 245, powers of the legislature to make laws, and Article 248, residuary powers of legislation. However, the delegation must not be excessive and must comply with the doctrine of excessive delegation. It means that the legislature must lay down the guiding principles, and the executive can only fill in the details. Judicial review ensures that delegated legislation is not arbitrary or unconstitutional, maintaining a balance between delegation and legislative control. Legislative and judicial control of delegated legislation. Legislative control. Parliamentary scrutiny. The legislature can control delegated legislation through the procedure of laying before Parliament. Under the Indian Constitution, certain rules or regulations made by the executive must be presented before the legislature for approval or disapproval within a specified period. Power to disallow. The legislature can disallow or annul delegated legislation if it is found to be inconsistent with the parent act or unconstitutional. In India, this power is exercised through statutory committees like the Joint Parliamentary Committee or Standing Committee. Guiding principles. The legislature can prescribe guidelines or frameworks within which the executive must exercise its delegated powers. This ensures that the executive's actions align with the intent of the primary legislation. Affirmative procedure. Some laws require that delegated legislation must be approved explicitly by the legislature before becoming operational, thus offering another layer of scrutiny. Judicial control. Judicial review. Courts in India have the power to review delegated legislation to ensure it does not exceed the authority granted by the Parent Act or violate constitutional principles. If delegated legislation is found to be unreasonable or ultra vires, beyond the powers granted, it can be struck down by the courts. Doctrine of excessive delegation. The judiciary checks whether the legislature has provided adequate guidelines or limits to the executive's powers. If there is excessive delegation of legislative powers without sufficient legislative guidance, the legislation can be deemed unconstitutional. Substantive and procedural review. Courts examine whether the delegated legislation is in line with the substantive provisions of the Parent Act and whether it adheres to procedural fairness, such as the requirement for consultation or publication before it takes effect. Principles of natural justice. Courts also ensure that the rules made by administrative agencies follow principles of natural justice, such as the right to a fair hearing and transparency when they affect the rights of individuals.
Thus, both legislative and judicial controls ensure that delegated legislation remains within the framework set by the Constitution and the enabling statute, maintaining a balance between effective governance and democratic accountability. Jurisdictional error and abuse of discretion. Jurisdictional error. A jurisdictional error occurs when an administrative body or tribunal acts beyond its legal authority or fails to exercise its power within the scope defined by the law. This type of error usually involves a misinterpretation or overreach of the legal boundaries set by the Parent Act or the Constitution. Example, if a tribunal with limited powers under a specific law passes an order outside the scope of its authority, it would constitute a jurisdictional error. Legal consequences. Courts can review and set aside decisions involving jurisdictional errors as they typically render the action invalid. Abuse of discretion. Abuse of discretion happens when an authority with discretionary powers exercises them improperly, arbitrarily, or in bad faith. Although the law grants discretion to administrative agencies to make decisions based on their expertise, this discretion must be exercised in a manner that is reasonable, just, and in accordance with the law's purpose. Example, if a public authority, while granting a license, denies it without considering relevant factors or gives preference without valid reasons, it constitutes an abuse of discretion. Legal consequences. Courts may intervene if the discretion is exercised in an arbitrary or unjust manner, ensuring that decisions are based on proper considerations and are not tainted by bias or improper motives. In both cases, the courts play a crucial role in ensuring that administrative bodies stay within their legal bounds and exercise their powers fairly, ensuring justice and accountability. In public administration, administrative adjudication and principles of natural justice. Administrative adjudication. Administrative adjudication refers to the process where administrative bodies or agencies resolve disputes, make decisions, or determine rights and obligations in matters involving public law. Unlike courts, these agencies typically focus on technical or specialized areas such as taxation, labor, or regulatory matters. Their decisions are generally subject to judicial review to ensure they comply with the law and principles of fairness. Principles of natural justice. Natural justice refers to the basic principles of fairness in decision-making. In administrative adjudication, two key principles are audi alteram partem, right to fair hearing ensures that all parties affected by a decision are given an opportunity to present their case, respond to evidence, and be heard. Nemo judex in causa sua, rule against bias ensures that the decision-maker is impartial and free from any bias or conflict of interest. These principles ensure that administrative decisions are fair, transparent, and respect the rights of individuals. Error apparent on the face of the record. An error apparent on the face of the record refers to a clear and obvious mistake in an administrative decision that can be seen without needing further investigation or evidence. It is a legal ground for judicial review, as such an error undermines the fairness and legitimacy of the decision. Example, if a tribunal passes a decision based on incorrect or irrelevant facts that are clearly visible in the record, this would be considered an error apparent on the face of the record. Non-application of mind. Non-application of mind occurs when an administrative authority fails to properly consider the relevant facts, law, or circumstances before making a decision. It suggests that the decision-maker did not thoughtfully or consciously engage with the material facts or legal principles required for a fair decision. Example, if an authority approves or denies a license without reviewing the supporting documents or relevant criteria, it could be deemed as a non-application of mind. Legal consequence, courts may set aside decisions made with non-application of mind, as it indicates a failure to exercise due care and responsibility in decision-making. In both cases, these issues undermine the legitimacy and fairness of administrative processes, and judicial review can ensure that such decisions are rectified. Constitutional provisions on tribunals under Articles 323-A and 323-B. Article 323-A, Tribunals for Administrative Matters. Article 323-A empowers the Parliament to establish tribunals for adjudicating matters related to administrative issues such as disputes between the government and its employees or disputes under certain laws like taxation and industrial disputes. This provision primarily concerns the establishment of administrative tribunals for the resolution of disputes related to the recruitment and conditions of service of public servants. Tribunals established under this article function as specialized quasi-judicial bodies with the authority to hear and decide administrative disputes, effectively taking the burden of regular courts in these areas. Example, the Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT, established under this provision, deals with service matters related to central government employees. Article 323-B, Other Tribunals. Article 323-B allows Parliament or state legislatures to establish tribunals for the resolution of disputes and complaints in specific matters such as taxation, industrial disputes, land reforms, and other legal matters. These tribunals have the jurisdiction to resolve specific disputes and adjudicate on matters within their designated areas. This Article provides for the creation of tribunals across a wide range of subjects, including taxation, civil disputes, environmental issues, and matters related to public interest. Litigation. Example: Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, ITAT, and National Green Tribunal, NGT, are examples of tribunals set up under this provision. Key features. Both Articles 323-A and 323-B aim to reduce the burden on regular courts and provide specialized, faster resolution of disputes. These tribunals operate outside the traditional judicial system but are subject to judicial review by higher courts, particularly the Supreme Court and High Courts, to ensure their decisions comply with the law and constitutional principles. The Tribunal Reforms, Rationalization Act, 2021 further streamlined the functioning and composition of tribunals in India, including the appointment process of tribunal members and their jurisdictional limits. In essence, these constitutional provisions facilitate the establishment of specialized tribunals to ensure efficient and timely resolution of disputes while maintaining judicial oversight to uphold fairness and legality. Administrative Tribunals Act, 1985. The Administrative Tribunals Act, 1985 was enacted to establish administrative tribunals in India for the adjudication of disputes and complaints related to the recruitment and conditions of service of public servants. It was specifically introduced in compliance with Article 323- of the Indian Constitution, which empowers Parliament to create tribunals for administrative matters. Key features of the Act. Establishment of tribunals. The Act empowers the central government to establish tribunals such as the Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT, and provides a framework for the creation of similar tribunals for different regions, states, and categories of public employees. The primary objective is to provide a specialized forum for the quick and efficient resolution of service-related disputes, relieving regular courts from handling such cases. Jurisdiction of tribunals. The Act provides tribunals with the jurisdiction to hear and decide disputes regarding the recruitment, promotion, disciplinary actions, and other service matters of public servants. The Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT, under this Act, has jurisdiction over the central government employees, while individual states can establish their own tribunals for state government employees. Composition. A tribunal is typically composed of a chairperson and members who are usually former judges or individuals with expertise in law and public administration. The chairperson is appointed by the President of India, while the members are appointed by the chairperson of the tribunal. Procedure. Tribunals are expected to adopt a more informal, expeditious, and cost-effective procedure compared to courts, though they are required to follow principles of natural justice. The Act allows oral hearings, representation by legal counsel, and written submissions, ensuring that all parties are heard before a decision is made. Appeals. While administrative tribunals are quasi-judicial bodies, their decisions can be challenged in the High Court and ultimately the Supreme Court. The Act provides that appeals against the orders of tribunals should be filed before the High Court under Article 226 of the Constitution, unless a special provision exists for an appeal to the Supreme Court. Exclusion of jurisdiction of courts. The Act excludes the jurisdiction of civil courts to adjudicate matters that fall within the jurisdiction of the tribunals. established under it. This ensures that tribunals handle administrative service disputes and reduces the burden on the regular judiciary. Significance and impact. Efficiency. The Act promotes the quick resolution of service-related disputes, reducing the time taken for such matters to be addressed in courts. Specialization. The establishment of administrative tribunals allows for decisions by bodies with specialized knowledge in administrative laws and public service matters. Accessibility. By providing a separate forum for public servants, the Act makes it easier for individuals to resolve disputes related to their employment in government sectors. Relieves courts. The Act eases the burden on regular courts by ensuring that administrative disputes are handled by dedicated tribunals rather than general judicial courts. In essence, the Administrative Tribunals Act, 1985 plays a crucial role in providing an efficient, specialized, and speedy mechanism for addressing service-related disputes of public employees, ensuring that the principles of natural justice are followed while also reducing the caseload of the regular judiciary. Constitution, powers, and procedure of administrative tribunals under the Administrative Tribunals Act, 1985. Constitution of Administrative Tribunals. Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT. The Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT, is established by the Administrative Tribunals Act, 1985, to adjudicate service-related disputes of central government employees. The CAT is a quasi-judicial body consisting of a chairperson, usually a retired Chief Justice of a High Court or a retired Supreme Court judge. Members who have experience in law, public administration, or a related field. The chairperson and members are appointed by the President of India. State administrative tribunals. States have the option to create their own state administrative tribunals under the Act to resolve service disputes of state government employees. The composition of state tribunals is similar to that of the Central Tribunal, with a chairperson and members appointed by the governor of the respective state. Benches of tribunals. The Central Administrative Tribunal can have multiple benches located in different regions of India. Each bench is led by a chairperson and has members assigned to handle cases from the region under its jurisdiction. Regional benches are created for greater accessibility to public servants across India. Powers of the administrative tribunals. Adjudicatory powers. The tribunals have the authority to hear and decide disputes related to the recruitment, promotion, disciplinary actions, service conditions, and pensions of public servants. These powers allow tribunals to issue orders, directions, and declarations regarding the legality of administrative actions affecting employees. Quasi-judicial powers. Tribunals exercise quasi-judicial powers, meaning they have the authority to make decisions that have a legal effect, similar to courts, but without being part of the formal judiciary. They can summon witnesses, require documents, issue orders, and enforce their decisions, just like courts. Exclusive jurisdiction. Civil courts have no jurisdiction over matters that fall under the purview of administrative tribunals. This exclusive jurisdiction ensures that the tribunals handle all service-related disputes within their domain. The jurisdiction of tribunals is confined to service matters related to public servants and does not extend to Matters like criminal offences, family disputes, or constitutional challenges. Appeals. The decisions of administrative tribunals can be appealed in the High Court under Article 226 of the Constitution or in exceptional cases directly to the Supreme Court. Review. Tribunals also have the power to review their own decisions, but this is limited to rectifying errors in the application of law or facts. Procedure of administrative tribunals. Under the Act. Initiating proceedings. The process begins when an aggrieved person files an application or petition before the tribunal, usually in the prescribed format. This application could be related to grievances like wrongful termination, denial of promotion, or other employment disputes. Applications must be filed within 1 year of the cause of action, such as a decision or order by the government, unless extended by the tribunal for valid reasons. Inquiry and hearing. Once the application is filed, the tribunal will examine the case, including any documents or evidence submitted by both the applicant and the government or relevant parties. Oral hearings are held where both parties can present their arguments. The tribunal is authorized to call for witnesses, record statements, and gather relevant information to decide the case. In some cases, the tribunal may appoint an expert or advisor to assist with technical or complex matters. Principles of natural justice. Administrative tribunals are required to adhere to the principles of natural justice while adjudicating disputes. Right to fair hearing, audi alteram partem. Both parties are given an opportunity to present their case. Impartiality, nemo judex in causa sua. The tribunal must be unbiased and free from conflicts of interest. Decision and orders. After considering the facts, evidence, and arguments, the tribunal issues its decision, which may include reinstatement of an employee, if wrongly dismissed, promotion or benefits owed to an employee, compensation for losses or damage caused by wrongful administrative actions. The tribunal may also issue declarations on the legality of the actions of public authorities. Execution of orders. If a person or authority fails to comply with the tribunal's order, the applicant can approach the High Court for the enforcement of the order under Article 226. Appeals and reviews. As mentioned earlier, decisions of the tribunals can be appealed to the High Court under Article 226 and in certain cases to the Supreme Court. The review process allows the tribunal to correct errors or omissions in its decisions. Key aspects of the Act's procedure. Simplified and speedy process. The procedure followed by administrative tribunals is generally simpler, faster, and less formal than that of regular courts. No costs. Typically, there are no court fees for filing a petition before the tribunal, making the process more accessible to public servants. No legal representation requirement. Though parties may opt for legal representation, the tribunals allow individuals to represent themselves in most cases, ensuring greater accessibility. Conclusion. The Administrative Tribunals Act, 1985 has created a specialized and accessible forum for resolving service-related disputes of public servants in India. By providing an expedited, cost-effective, and informal process, it ensures that administrative disputes are resolved efficiently while safeguarding the principles of fairness and justice. The tribunals are integral to upholding the rights of government employees and ensuring Accountability in public administration. Public corporations, necessity and parliamentary control over public corporations. Necessity of public corporations. Public corporations, also known as statutory corporations or government-owned corporations, are created by the government through an act of parliament or state legislature. They are established to carry out certain commercial, industrial, or public functions that are essential for the national economy or public welfare. The necessity of public corporations arises from several factors. Public interest and welfare. Governments may create public corporations to address specific needs of the public that may not be effectively met by the private sector, such as utilities, water, electricity, transportation, healthcare, and education. Public corporations ensure that essential services remain accessible to the public at reasonable rates and are not solely driven by profit motives. Control over strategic sectors. In sectors like defense, energy, transportation, and telecommunications, the government may want to maintain control for reasons of national security, public safety, and economic stability. Public corporations allow the government to maintain a direct stake in these strategic industries while ensuring services are available to all citizens. Economic development. Public corporations can be used to promote economic growth and development in key industries, especially in countries with large public sector economies. They play a significant role in infrastructure development, resource management, and fostering innovation. Revenue generation. Public corporations generate revenue for the government while providing essential services. Profits from these corporations can be reinvested into social welfare programs or infrastructure projects. Regulation and oversight. Public corporations can act as a tool for the government to regulate sectors that have natural monopolies or face significant market failures. This ensures that services are delivered fairly and efficiently. Parliamentary control over public corporations. Since public corporations are funded and controlled by the government, parliamentary control is vital to ensure they operate within the legal and policy frameworks, are accountable for their actions, and use public resources responsibly. Establishment and governance. Public corporations are usually created through acts of parliament or state legislatures. These acts define the corporation's functions, powers, and the framework for its operations. Parliament has the power to amend or revoke these laws, thus ensuring that public corporations remain aligned with evolving policy priorities. Budgetary control. Parliament exercises control over the financial functioning of public corporations by approving their annual budgets, ensuring that funds allocated to them are used for the intended public purposes. This control helps prevent financial mismanagement, ensures transparency in public spending, and allows for the periodic evaluation of the corporation's performance. Oversight through parliamentary committees. Parliamentary committees, such as the Public Accounts Committee, PAC, Committee on Public Undertakings, COPU, and departmental standing committees, play an essential role in scrutinizing the functioning of public corporations. These committees examine the annual reports, accounts, and performance of public corporations, making recommendations for improvements in governance, efficiency, and accountability. Auditing and accountability. CAG, Controller and Auditor General, audits the accounts of public corporations. The findings are presented to Parliament through the Public Accounts Committee, PAC. This ensures that the funds allocated to these corporations are being used efficiently and effectively, and any irregularities are addressed promptly. Regulatory oversight. Parliament can impose specific regulations and standards on the operations of public corporations through laws and statutes. These regulations ensure that the corporations adhere to the principles of good governance, transparency, and ethical business practices. Appointment of directors and management. The government typically has a say in the appointment of senior management, including chairpersons, directors, and chief executives. The role of Parliament here is to ensure that these appointments are based on merit and that management operates in the best interests of the public. Performance evaluation and reporting. Public corporations are required to present annual reports to Parliament, which contain financial statements, performance reviews, and strategic plans. This helps Parliament evaluate whether the corporation is achieving its objectives and utilizing public resources effectively. Legislative review and action. If a public corporation is found to be inefficient, corrupt, or not meeting its goals, Parliament can enact laws to restructure, privatize, or liquidate the corporation. This provides a mechanism for holding public corporations accountable to the people they serve. Conclusion. Public corporations serve a crucial role in ensuring that essential public services are delivered efficiently, fairly, and in alignment with national goals. Their necessity arises from the need for public welfare, control over strategic sectors, and economic development. Parliamentary control over public corporations ensures transparency, accountability, and alignment with national interests by providing oversight through financial scrutiny, performance evaluation, and governance mechanisms. This control is critical to preventing mismanagement and ensuring that public resources are utilized for the greater good of the public. Liability of public corporations and the role of Ombudsman Lokpal in India. Liability of public corporations. Public corporations, though created and funded by the government, are distinct entities with their own legal personality. Their liability can arise from a variety of actions, such as contract breaches, tortious liability, or failure to comply with legal or regulatory frameworks. Legal status and liability. Public corporations, like any other corporate body, are responsible for their actions and can be sued or held accountable for wrongdoing. They have a separate legal entity under the law, meaning they can enter into contracts, own property, and be sued in their own name. Article 298 of the Indian Constitution empowers the union and state governments to carry on trade and business, and this includes setting up public corporations for commercial purposes. It also allows the government to be held liable for their actions in carrying out such trade or business. Contractual liability. Public corporations can be sued for breach of contract in the same manner as private companies. They are liable for any failure to fulfill contractual obligations with third parties. Article 299 of the Indian Constitution requires that contracts made by or on behalf of the government, and thus by public corporations, must be executed in the name of the President or Governor, and must adhere to specific legal formalities. If these formalities are not followed, the contract may be deemed Void. Tortious liability. Public corporations are also liable for torts committed in the course of their activities, just like any private corporation. For example, if a public corporation causes harm or damage due to negligence, it can be held liable for compensation. Article 300 of the Constitution provides that the Union of India and state governments may sue or be sued in their name, which applies to public corporations acting as organs of the government. Public liability and accountability. Public corporations can be held accountable for any malfeasance or inefficiency in the services they provide. They are answerable to the public, and their decisions are subject to scrutiny through parliamentary committees, judicial review, and audit by the Controller and Auditor General, CAG. Article 77 and Article 78 of the Constitution outline the executive's responsibility to ensure that government business, including public corporations, is conducted in a transparent and accountable manner. Ombudsman Lokpal in India. The concept of the Ombudsman in India, known as Lokpal and Lokayuktas, is a mechanism for addressing complaints of public grievances, ensuring accountability, and protecting the rights of citizens in cases of government malfeasance or corruption. Lokpal, Central Ombudsman. The Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act, 2013 created the Lokpal at the Centre to address corruption and inefficiency in government services, including the functioning of public corporations. Lokpal is an independent body established by the government to investigate complaints against high-ranking public officials, including ministers, members of parliament, government servants, and public corporations for corruption, abuse of office, or misconduct. The Lokpal can receive complaints from citizens, investigate corruption cases, and recommend appropriate actions, including prosecution, departmental action, or disciplinary action. Jurisdiction and powers of Lokpal. Jurisdiction. The Lokpal has jurisdiction over central government officials, including public sector undertakings, PSUs, and public corporations. Powers. Lokpal has the power to conduct inquiries, order investigations, and initiate criminal prosecutions in cases of corruption. The body can refer matters to the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, or the Enforcement Directorate, ED, for investigation. Article 53 of the Constitution provides that executive power rests with the President of India, which extends to public corporations and their functioning. The Lokpal is part of the executive oversight mechanism ensuring transparency and accountability. Lokayuktas, state-level ombudsmen. Lokayuktas are established in states to perform a similar function as the Lokpal but at the state level. They deal with issues of corruption, maladministration, and public grievances related to state government officials, including those in state-owned enterprises or public corporations. The establishment of Lokayuktas is governed by state laws, but they are based on the model set by the Lokpal. Constitutional basis and accountability. The Indian Constitution does not explicitly provide for the Lokpal or Lokayuktas, however, their establishment stems from the need for administrative accountability. The parliamentary committees and courts provide additional mechanisms for accountability and control over public corporations. The office of the Lokpal is intended to ensure that public corporations and government agencies act within the law, are not engaged in corruption, and that public grievances are addressed effectively. Key articles related to public corporations and Ombudsman Lokpal. Article 298 gives the union and state governments the power to carry on trade or business. Article 299 deals with the contractual liabilities of the union and state, including public corporations. Article 300 ensures that the government, including public corporations, can be sued and held liable. Article 77 provides that the union government's business is conducted by ministers, which also applies to public corporations under the government. Article 78 mandates the government to provide information to Parliament, ensuring transparency in public corporations. Article 53 deals with the executive powers of the President of India, which extend to public corporations. Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act 2013 establishes the Lokpal for investigating corruption at the centre and Lokayuktas at the state level. Article 143 provides the power of the President to refer questions of law to the Supreme Court, often relevant in matters of legal disputes concerning public corporations or corruption. Conclusion: public corporations in India are legal entities with liability for their actions, including contractual breaches and torts, and can be held accountable through legal processes. Their operations and the misuse of public resources are scrutinized through mechanisms like parliamentary oversight and judicial review. The Lokpal and Lokayuktas serve as effective watchdogs for corruption and misconduct, ensuring that public corporations operate transparently and responsibly. These bodies strengthen the accountability mechanisms for public corporations, safeguarding citizens' rights and fostering good governance.